I smoothed my dress, taking a deep breath before stepping into the dining room. The aroma of roast chicken and rosemary potatoes filled the air, but my stomach churned with anxiety. Tonight was the night I'd finally tell Martha the truth. "There she is!" Paul's warm voice greeted me as I entered. He stood, pulling out my chair with a flourish. "I was beginning to think you'd gotten lost in your closet again." I managed a weak smile. "Just wanted to look nice for our special dinner." Martha beamed at me from across the table, her silver hair perfectly coiffed. "Oh, darling, you always look lovely, doesn't she, Paul?" "The loveliest," my husband agreed, squeezing my hand. As we settled in to eat, I couldn't help but marvel at how picture-perfect everything seemed. The candlelight flickered, casting a warm glow over Martha's prized china. Paul and his mother chatted easily about work and the latest town gossip. To an outsider, we must have looked like the ideal family. If only they knew. "Vera, dear," Martha said, breaking into my thoughts. "You've barely touched your food. Is everything all right?" I set down my fork, my heart racing. "Actually, there's something I need to tell you both." Paul's brow furrowed with concern. "What is it, honey?" I took a deep breath, steeling myself. I can't have children. I found out a few months ago, but I've been too scared to say anything." The silence that followed was deafening. Martha's fork clattered against her plate, and Paul's grip on my hand tightened. "What do you mean, you can't have children?" Martha's voice was barely above a whisper. "I have a condition," I explained, willing my voice not to shake. "The doctors say it's unlikely I'll ever be able to conceive." Paul's arm went around me, pulling me close. "Oh, Vera, why didn't you tell me sooner?" "I'm so sorry," I whispered, tears threatening to spill. I didn't know how. Martha's face had gone pale, her lips pressed into a thin line. "But surely there must be something they can do? Some treatment?" I shook my head. "We've explored all the options. It's just not possible." "Well," Martha said, her voice suddenly brisk, "I suppose we'll just have to adjust our expectations, won't we?" The words hit me like a slap. I'd known Martha would be disappointed. She'd made no secret of her desire for grandchildren. But the coldness in her tone caught me off guard. Paul must have sensed my distress because he quickly changed the subject. "Mom, why don't you tell Vera about the new book club you've joined?" As Martha launched into a description of her latest social endeavor, I pushed the food around on my plate, no longer hungry. The easy warmth that had filled the room earlier had vanished, replaced by a tension so thick I could barely breathe. Later that night, as Paul and I got ready for bed, he pulled me into a tight embrace. "I'm sorry about Mom," he murmured into my hair. "You know how she gets. She'll come around." I nodded, not trusting myself to speak. As I drifted off to sleep, Martha's words echoed in my mind. "We'll just have to adjust our expectations." Little did I know, those expectations would soon become the battleground for a war I never saw coming. The weeks following my revelation to Martha flew by in a blur of tension and forced smiles. Before I knew it, Christmas was upon us, and we were packing for our annual trip to Paul's family home. I stood in our bedroom, staring at my open suitcase, my stomach in knots. "You okay, honey?" Paul's voice startled me out of my reverie. I plastered on a smile, just making sure I haven't forgotten anything. He wrapped his arms around me from behind. "Mom's really looking forward to seeing us. She's been calling nonstop about her plans for the holiday." I swallowed hard, remembering the icy silence that had settled between Martha and me since that fateful dinner. "That's great," I managed. As we pulled up to the sprawling Victorian house, festive lights twinkling in every window, I took a deep breath. Maybe I was overthinking things. Maybe Martha had come to terms with our situation. The front door flew open, and there she was, arms outstretched. "My darlings, you're here at last!" Martha enveloped Paul in a warm hug, then turned to me. For a moment, I saw something flicker in her eyes. Disappointment? Resentment? But then it was gone, replaced by her usual bright smile. "Vera, dear, come in out of the cold. I've made your favorite hot cocoa." As we settled into the cozy living room, surrounded by twinkling Christmas trees and the scent of cinnamon, I allowed myself to relax. This was the Martha I knew and loved. The warm, nurturing matriarch who had welcomed me into the family with open arms. "So," Martha said, settling into her armchair, "tell me all about what's been happening. How's the boutique, Vera?" I launched into a story about a recent fashion show we'd hosted, grateful for the easy conversation. But as I spoke, I couldn't help but notice Martha's gaze continually drifting to my midsection, a small frown creasing her brow. "And what about you two?" she asked when I finished. "Any news to share?" The weight of her expectation hung heavy in the air. Paul shifted uncomfortably beside me. "Mom, we've talked about this," he said gently. "Vera and I are happy just as we are." Martha's smile tightened. Of course. I just thought, well, miracles do happen, you know." I felt as if all the air had been sucked out of the room. "I think I'll go unpack," I murmured, fleeing upstairs. In the guest room, I leaned against the closed door, fighting back tears. How could I have been so naive? Of course Martha hadn't accepted our situation. She was just biding her time, waiting for that miracle. A soft knock startled me. "Vera?" It was Paul's sister, Sarah. "Can I come in?" I opened the door, grateful for her presence. Sarah had always been an ally. "I overheard," she said, pulling me into a hug. "Mom's being ridiculous. Don't let her get to you." I sank onto the bed. "I just don't understand. She's always been so loving, so accepting. Now it feels like everything's changed." Sarah sighed, sitting beside me. "Mom's always had this picture-perfect idea of how our lives should be. It's not fair, but, well, you've rocked her world a bit." "I didn't choose this," I whispered, anger and hurt bubbling up inside me. "I know," Sarah squeezed my hand, "and Mom will come around. Just maybe brace yourself for a bumpy ride this holiday." As if on cue, Martha's voice floated up the stairs. "Vera? Paul? Come down, please. I have a surprise for you." Sarah and I exchanged wary glances. Whatever this surprise was, I had a sinking feeling it wasn't going to make for a very merry Christmas. Martha's surprise turned out to be an impromptu family gathering. As Paul and I descended the stairs, we were greeted by a sea of familiar faces, aunts, uncles, cousins, all beaming with holiday cheer. My heart sank. This wasn't just a family dinner, it was a spectacle. "There you are," Martha chirped, ushering us into the living room. "Everyone's been waiting to see you too." I plastered on a smile, gripping Paul's hand tightly as we made our rounds. Hugs, kisses, and the same dreaded question over and over. "So, when are we going to hear the pitter-patter of little feet?" Each time, I felt Martha's eyes boring into me, waiting for my response. Paul fielded most of the questions, his arm protectively around my waist, but I could sense his growing discomfort. As the evening wore on, I retreated to the kitchen, desperate for a moment of peace. I was pouring myself a glass of wine when Aunt Mildred cornered me. "Vera, dear," she said, her voice dripping with faux concern. I couldn't help but notice, "Well, you're not drinking the eggnog, are you?" She left the question hanging, her eyes bright with anticipation. Before I could respond, Martha swooped in. "Oh, Mildred, don't be silly. Vera's not pregnant. She can't have children, remember?" The silence that followed was deafening. I stood there, frozen, as Aunt Mildred's expression morphed from excitement to pity. Martha's words hung in the air, sharp and cutting. I need some air," I mumbled, pushing past them and out onto the back porch. The cold night air hit me like a slap, but I welcomed it. Tears stung my eyes as I gripped the porch railing, trying to steady myself. "Vera?" Paul's voice came from behind me. "What happened? Are you okay?" I whirled around, anger and hurt bubbling over. "Your mother," I spat. "She just announced to everyone that I can't have children, like it's some sort of defect." Paul's face darkened. "She did what? I'll talk to her." "No," I cut him off. "I'm done. I can't do this anymore, Paul. The looks, the whispers, the constant disappointment. I thought I could handle it, but I can't." He reached for me, but I stepped back. "Vera, please, it's Christmas. Let's just get through the holiday and then we'll figure this out." I laughed bitterly. "Figure what out? How to make your mother accept me? How to make her see me as more than just a broken incubator?" "That's not fair," Paul protested. "Mom loves you. She's just having a hard time adjusting." "Adjusting?" I echoed incredulously. "Paul, she's treating me like I've failed her somehow, like I'm less of a woman because I can't give her grandchildren." Just then, the back door opened. Martha stood there, her face a mask of concern. "Is everything all right out here? The family's asking for you two." I saw red. "No, Martha, everything is not all right. How dare you tell everyone about my personal medical information?" Martha had the grace to look ashamed, but only for a moment. I just thought it would be easier if everyone knew, to avoid awkward questions. "Easier for whom?" I demanded. Because it certainly wasn't easier for me. Paul stepped between us. "Mom, that wasn't your information to share. You owe Vera an apology." Martha's expression hardened. "I was just trying to help. If Vera can't handle a little family gossip, perhaps she's not cut out for this family after all." The words hit me like a physical blow. I looked at Paul, waiting for him to defend me, to put his mother in her place. But he just stood there, caught between us, silent. In that moment, I realized the true depth of the chasm that had opened between Martha and me. And worse, I saw the impossible position Paul was in, torn between his wife and his mother. As I stood there on that cold porch, caught between the warmth of the family gathering inside and the icy reality of my new position in this family, I knew nothing would ever be the same again. The weeks following that disastrous Christmas were a blur of tense phone calls and awkward family dinners. Paul tried to play peacemaker, but his efforts only seemed to make things worse. Martha's hostility towards me had become an open secret, impossible to ignore. One Sunday afternoon, as Paul and I prepared for our weekly visit to Martha's, I finally broke my silence. "I can't do this anymore, Paul," I said, my voice barely above a whisper. He paused halfway through buttoning his shirt. "What do you mean?" "These visits, the constant judgment. Your mother hates me now, and I don't know how to fix it." Paul sighed, running a hand through his hair. "She doesn't hate you, Vera. She's just struggling." "Struggling?" I echoed, anger rising in my chest. "She told the entire family about my medical condition without my permission. She treats me like I'm broken. How is that struggling?" Before Paul could respond, his phone buzzed. He glanced at it, his face paling. "It's Mom. She says she's coming over. Now." My heart raced as we heard Martha's car pull into the driveway. She burst through the front door without knocking, her face flushed with anger. "How could you?" she demanded, waving a piece of paper in my face. I stepped back, confused. "What are you talking about?" "This!" She thrust the paper at me. "It was a brochure for an adoption agency. I found this in your purse when you left it at my house last week. Were you even going to tell us you were considering this?" Paul's eyes widened. "Vera, is this true?" I felt my world tilting on its axis. Yes, I had picked up the brochure, curious about our options, but I hadn't made any decisions, hadn't even discussed it with Paul yet. I was just looking into it," I stammered. "I didn't." "Didn't what?" Martha interrupted. "Didn't think about how this would affect our family, about how a child that isn't blood would fit into our legacy?" Her words hit me like a physical blow. "A child that isn't blood?" I repeated, incredulous. "Is that all that matters to you?" Paul stepped between us. "Mom, that's enough. Vera and I haven't made any decisions yet." "But you're considering it?" Martha pressed. "Paul, think about what you're doing." "There are other options. Surrogacy, or what?" I snapped. "Finding Paul a new wife who can give you the grandchildren you so desperately want?" The room fell silent. Martha's face contorted with a mix of shock and something else. Guilt? Had I accidentally hit upon the truth? Paul looked between us, his expression pained. "Mom, I think you should go." Martha's eyes filled with tears. "I'm just trying to protect our family, Paul. Can't you see that?" As she left, slamming the door behind her, I turned to Paul. "Did you know about this? About her obsession with having grandchildren?" He shook his head, looking lost. "I knew she wanted them, but I never thought... God, Vera, I'm so sorry." I sank onto the couch, my mind reeling. "What are we going to do, Paul? This isn't just about children anymore. It's about your mother trying to control our lives, our choices." Paul sat beside me, taking my hand. "We'll figure it out. Together." But as I looked into his eyes, I saw the conflict there. He was torn between his love for me and his loyalty to his mother. And for the first time since this whole mess began, I realized that our marriage might not survive this war. I squeezed Paul's hand, making a decision. "No," I said firmly. "I need to handle this myself. It's time I had a real conversation with your mother, alone." I stood outside Martha's house, my heart pounding. The decision to confront her alone felt both terrifying and necessary. Taking a deep breath, I rang the doorbell. Martha opened the door, her surprise quickly morphing into a guarded expression. "Vera? What are you doing here?" "We need to talk," I said firmly, stepping inside without waiting for an invitation. Martha led me to the living room, tension crackling between us. "Where's Paul?" she asked, glancing behind me. "This is between you and me," I replied, sitting down. "It's time we cleared the air." Martha's lips thinned. "I'm not sure what there is to discuss. You've made your choices clear." "Have I?" I leaned forward. "Because from where I'm standing, you've been the one making choices for everyone. Choices about my life, my marriage, even my body." "I've only ever wanted what's best for this family," Martha protested. "No," I cut her off. "You've only wanted what's best for your idea of this family. But here's the reality, Martha. I can't have children. That's not going to change, no matter how much you wish it would." Martha's face crumpled. "But surely there are other options, surrogacy, or finding Paul a new wife," I finished for her, watching her flinch. Don't think I haven't noticed the way you look at me now, like I'm somehow less of a woman, less worthy of your son. That's not true, Martha whispered, but her eyes betrayed her. Isn't it? I pressed. Then explain to me why you told the entire family about my condition without my permission, why you've been treating me like a pariah ever since you found out. Martha's composure cracked. Because you've ruined everything, she cried. All my dreams for Paul, for our family legacy. Don't you understand? Children are everything. They're the future, the continuation of our line. Her words hit me like a slap. And what about love? I demanded. What about the family Paul and I could build, even without biological children? Or does that not count in your narrow worldview? Martha stood abruptly, pacing the room. You don't understand. In our family, tradition is everything. Carrying on the bloodline is more important than your son's happiness? I interrupted. Because let me tell you something, Martha. Paul is miserable. He's torn between his love for me and his loyalty to you, and it's tearing him apart. For a moment I saw a flicker of doubt in Martha's eyes, but then her expression hardened. If Paul is unhappy, perhaps that's a sign. Maybe you two should reconsider. Our marriage, I finished, standing to face her. Is that what you want, Martha? For Paul to leave me so he can find someone who can give you the grandchildren you so desperately want? The silence that followed was deafening. Martha's face paled, and I knew I'd hit the nail on the head. My God, I breathed. You've actually considered it, haven't you? You'd rather see your son divorce me than accept a life without grandchildren. Martha's silence was all the confirmation I needed. Anger and hurt surged through me, and before I could stop myself, the words tumbled out. Well, let me make this easy for you, I said, my voice shaking. I'm done. I'm done trying to win your approval, done watching you manipulate Paul, done feeling like less of a person because of something I can't control. I moved towards the door, pausing to look back at Martha's shocked face. You have a choice to make, Martha. Accept me as I am, as part of your family, or risk losing Paul forever. Because I promise you, if you force him to choose, you won't like the outcome. As I walked out, slamming the door behind me, I felt a strange mix of terror and exhilaration. I'd finally said my piece, laid all my cards on the table. Now it was up to Martha to make the next move. And as for me, I had some serious thinking to do about the future of my marriage and whether it could survive the storm that was surely coming. The year following my confrontation with Martha was a tightrope walk of strained politeness and unspoken tension. Paul and I had managed to patch things up, but the specter of his mother's disapproval hung over us like a dark cloud. As another Christmas approached, I steeled myself for what I knew would be a challenging family gathering. Are you sure you want to do this? Paul asked as we pulled up to his childhood home, festooned with twinkling lights and garish decorations. I squeezed his hand. We have to face her sometime. Maybe this year will be different. Oh, how wrong I was. The moment we stepped through the door, I knew something was off. Martha's smile was too bright, her hug too enthusiastic. Vera, darling, Paul, come in, come in. I have a wonderful surprise for everyone. My stomach dropped. In my experience, Martha's surprises were rarely wonderful for me. As we entered the living room, my eyes landed on a face I hadn't seen in years. Elise, Paul's ex-fiancée, sat perched on the edge of the sofa, looking as uncomfortable as I felt. Elise? Paul's voice was a mix of shock and confusion. What are you doing here? Martha clapped her hands together, beaming. I ran into Elise at the supermarket last week. Can you believe it? I thought it would be lovely to have her join us for Christmas for old time's sake. I felt the blood drain from my face. This wasn't a coincidence. This was a calculated move. As the evening progressed, Martha's plan became painfully clear. She fawned over Elise, constantly bringing up shared memories and inside jokes that excluded me. But it was the not-so-subtle comments about children that truly twisted the knife. Oh, Elise, Martha gushed, you always did want a big family. How many children do you have now? Elise shifted uncomfortably. Actually, I don't. But Martha barreled on, oblivious or uncaring. You know, Paul always talked about having at least 3. It's such a shame some people can't fulfill those dreams. The room fell silent. I felt every eye on me, a mix of pity and curiosity. Paul's hand found mine under the table, squeezing tight. Mom, he said, his voice low and warning, that's enough. But Martha was on a roll. I'm just saying, it's important to consider these things. Family is everything, after all. Isn't that right, Elise? Something inside me snapped. I stood abruptly, my chair scraping loudly against the floor. Excuse me, I managed before fleeing to the back porch. The cold air hit me like a slap, but I welcomed it. Tears stung my eyes as I gripped the railing, trying to steady myself. How had it come to this? How had the woman who once welcomed me with open arms become so cruel? I heard the door open behind me. Vera? It was Elise. Great. I'm so sorry, she said, coming to stand beside me. I had no idea Martha was planning this. If I'd known... I turned to look at her, really look at her for the first time that night. There was genuine remorse in her eyes. It's not your fault, I said softly. Martha's been difficult since she found out I can't have children. Elise's eyes widened. Oh, Vera, I had no idea. That's awful. And ironic, considering... She trailed off, but I caught her meaning. Considering what? Elise took a deep breath. Considering I can't have children either, and I never wanted them in the first place. It's part of why Paul and I broke up all those years ago. The revelation hit me like a thunderbolt. Martha's perfect plan, her ideal daughter-in-law, was just as flawed in her eyes as I was. As I stood there, processing this information, I heard raised voices from inside. Paul and Martha were arguing, their words muffled but their tones clear. In that moment, I knew. This was it. The breaking point. Whatever happened next would determine the future of our family for better or worse. Taking a deep breath, I squared my shoulders and turned towards the door. It was time to face the music and hopefully change the tune once and for all. I stepped back into the living room. Elise closed behind me. The tension was palpable, with Paul and Martha locked in a heated argument. How could you do this, Mom? Paul's voice was strained. Inviting Elise here, trying to manipulate us like this? Martha's face was flushed with indignation. I'm only trying to help. Can't you see that Vera can't give you the family you deserve? The room fell silent as they noticed our return. I took a deep breath, steeling myself for what I knew I had to do. Martha, I said, my voice surprisingly steady, your plan has backfired spectacularly. She blinked, confusion replacing anger. What are you talking about? I gestured to Elise. Why don't you tell her? Tell everyone what you just told me. Elise stepped forward, her chin raised defiantly. I can't have children either, Martha. And more importantly, I never wanted them. It's why Paul and I broke up in the first place. The shock on Martha's face would have been comical if the situation weren't so painful. She stumbled back, collapsing onto the sofa. But that's impossible. You always talked about having a big family. Because that's what you wanted to hear, Elise replied softly. I was young and trying to please everyone, but it wasn't true to who I am. I felt a surge of strength, fueled by the vindication of Martha's plan crumbling around her. You see, Martha? Your perfect daughter-in-law, the one you've been holding up as an ideal, is just as flawed in your eyes as I am. Martha's gaze darted between us, desperation creeping into her voice. But surely there must be other options. Surrogacy or... Stop it! Paul's shout startled us all. He moved to stand beside me, his arm wrapping protectively around my waist. Just stop, Mom. This obsession with grandchildren has to end. Now. I placed my hand on Paul's chest, silently asking him to let me handle this. He nodded, stepping back. Martha, I began, my voice low and intense. I need you to listen carefully. Your actions tonight have shown me the depths of your betrayal. You've made it clear that your desire for grandchildren outweighs any love or respect you might have had for me. Martha opened her mouth to protest, but I held up a hand, silencing her. No, it's my turn to speak. For years, I've tried to be the perfect daughter-in-law. I've bent over backwards to please you, to fit into your idea of what this family should be. But I'm done. I'm done feeling inadequate, done apologizing for something I can't control. I took a step closer to her, my voice gaining strength. You need to understand something, Martha. A family isn't defined by blood or biology. It's defined by love, by choice, by the connections we forge. Paul and I may not be able to have biological children, but that doesn't make us any less of a family. Tears were streaming down Martha's face now, but I pressed on, years of pent-up frustration pouring out. Your narrow-mindedness and outdated views have nearly destroyed this family. You've pushed away your son, alienated your daughter-in-law, and for what? A dream that was never yours to control in the first place. I turned to Paul, my heart swelling with love and gratitude for his unwavering support. Paul and I will build our family our way, whether that's through adoption, fostering, or simply cherishing each other. And you, Martha, have a choice to make. The room was dead silent, all eyes on Martha as she sat, shell-shocked and tearful. You can either accept us as we are, love us unconditionally, and be a part of the family we choose to create, I said, my voice softening slightly, or you can cling to your prejudices and lose us both forever. The choice is yours. With that, I turned on my heel, heading for the door. As I reached for the handle, I paused, looking back at the stunned faces of our family. "Merry Christmas, everyone. Paul, I'll be in the car when you're ready to go home." As I stepped out into the cold night air, I felt a weight lift from my shoulders. Whatever happened next, I knew I had finally stood up for myself, for my marriage, and for the future I deserved. The weeks following that fateful Christmas night were a blur of tense phone calls and uncomfortable silences. Paul and I had retreated to our home, a sanctuary from the storm of family drama. But we both knew this limbo couldn't last forever. It was a crisp Sunday morning when Martha called, her voice small and hesitant. "Can we talk? All of us?" I exchanged a look with Paul, seeing my own mixture of hope and apprehension mirrored in his eyes. "Okay," I said. "Come over this afternoon." The hours ticked by slowly. I busied myself cleaning, then re-cleaning our already spotless living room. When the doorbell finally rang, my heart leapt into my throat. Martha stood on our doorstep, looking smaller and older than I'd ever seen her. Gone was the imperious matriarch. In her place stood a woman humbled by her own actions. "Thank you for seeing me," she said softly as we settled in the living room. For a moment we sat in uncomfortable silence. Then Martha took a deep breath. "I owe you both an apology," she began, her voice quavering. "Vera, what I did, it was unforgivable. I let my own desires and expectations blind me to what truly matters, your happiness, both of you." I felt Paul tense beside me, ready to jump to my defense if needed, but I placed a hand on his arm, silently asking him to let his mother continue. Martha's eyes filled with tears. "I've spent these past weeks thinking about what you said, Vera, about family being more than blood, and I realized I've been so wrong, so terribly, horribly wrong." She reached into her purse, pulling out a stack of papers. "I've been doing some research about adoption, fostering, even volunteering with children in need. I thought, well, if you're open to it, I'd like to help, in whatever way you choose to build your family." I felt my own eyes welling up. This was more than I'd ever dared to hope for. "Martha," I began, but she held up a hand. "Please, let me finish. I know I have a lot to make up for. I know I've hurt you both deeply. Well, but if you'll let me, I want to try to be better, to be the mother and mother-in-law you both deserve." Paul spoke up, his voice thick with emotion. "Mom, do you really mean that? Because we can't go through this again. Vera and I, we're a team. If you want to be in our lives, you have to accept us both, fully." Martha nodded vigorously. "I do. I really do. I've been so foolish, so stuck in my old-fashioned ways, but I want to change. I want to be part of your lives, whatever form your family takes." I took a deep breath, looking at Paul. We'd discussed this possibility, but now that it was here, I felt a moment of hesitation. Could we really trust her? But as I looked into Martha's eyes, I saw genuine remorse and a desperate hope for reconciliation. And I realized that holding onto anger and resentment would only poison our future. "Okay," I said softly. "We can try, but Martha, you have to understand, this is your last chance. We're willing to move forward, but it has to be on our terms." Martha nodded, tears streaming down her face. "Thank you. Thank you both. I promise I'll do better." As we talked more, outlining boundaries and expectations, I felt a weight lifting from my shoulders. The road ahead wouldn't be easy, but for the first time in years, I felt hope for our family's future. Later that night, as Paul and I lay in bed, he pulled me close. "You amazed me today," he murmured. "Your strength, your capacity for forgiveness. I fall in love with you more every day." I snuggled into his embrace, feeling a sense of peace I hadn't experienced in a long time. "We're going to be okay, aren't we?" I whispered. "More than okay," Paul replied, kissing my forehead. "We're going to build an amazing life, Vera. Our way." As I drifted off to sleep, I thought about the journey we'd been through. The pain, the struggles, the moments of despair, but also the love, the resilience, and now, the hope for a brighter future. Our family might not look like the one Martha had once envisioned, but it would be ours, built on love, understanding, and the unbreakable bond between Paul and me. And really, what could be more perfect than that?